Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another real tale with you. Crime can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Today I'm going to share a story with you, a story from Lucknow. This was a case so complex and puzzling that the Lucknow police couldn't solve it, despite trying every possible way. But then a mysterious force took the case into its own hands and finally solved it. To know the full story, make sure to watch this video till the end. This story is about Ruby. Ruby lived in Lucknow and came from a poor family. Her life was going on relatively well until she got married. Shortly after the marriage, she had 2 children, but her relationship with her husband was not good. They used to fight a lot because her husband was an excessive drinker. Their fights escalated to such an extent that they eventually separated. Ruby, now alone, moved back to her mother's house with her 2 children to try and make a living. Her mother also lived alone in the house. Her mother was also alone, and because of this, both the mother and daughter found solace in each other. This is how their lives began to move forward. Ruby wasn't very old, and now she lived with her mother in their house. Not far from their home lived a well-known occultist. Many people from the area would visit him, bringing their problems or seeking help for spells and rituals. Ruby was also troubled by her life. She had 2 children who were living separately, and her husband was a drunkard, which is why she left him. Her mother was also living alone, so Ruby went to the occultist, hoping to find some happiness or relief in her life, even in small matters that might make her life a little better. Ruby started visiting the occultist regularly, and after a while she began to feel that her life was getting a bit better. This strengthened her belief, and she started visiting him 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes even taking her mother along. Her mother was aware that Ruby was visiting the occultist to find solutions to her problems. Time passed like this, and whatever the occultist told her to do, Ruby did it. Time moved forward, and then came the year 2020 and the festival of Karva Chauth. Karva Chauth is a festival where married women fast for the long life of their husbands. But Ruby's husband had left her, and she had also left him, so Ruby did not keep the fast. After evening turned into night, Ruby suddenly told her mother that she was going to meet the occultist. Her mother didn't find this unusual since Ruby had gone out at night before and returned within half an hour. So her mother said, "Okay, but come back soon." Ruby left to meet the occultist, but a long time passed and she didn't return home. This made her mother worried because Ruby had never done this before. Whenever Ruby went out, she would return home within the time she mentioned. Her mother then went to the occultist and asked him if Ruby had come there. The occultist said that Ruby hadn't come. This made her mother uneasy, thinking her daughter might have lied to her. The people sitting around the occultist, who were familiar with the situation, also confirmed that Ruby had not been there that day. Her mother started searching for Ruby in the nearby areas, but there was no trace of her. Days passed and Ruby still hadn't returned home. By the 3rd day, Ruby was still missing. Her mother went back to the occultist, who assured her that Ruby was nearby and would return home soon. However, 4 days passed, and Ruby was still missing. This made her mother suspect that something was seriously wrong because her daughter would never do something like this. Then Ruby's mother quickly went to the police station in Lucknow and filed a missing person report for Ruby. As soon as the report was filed, the police began their investigation. First, they questioned Ruby's mother, asking what Ruby did, where she lived, what she was doing, and where she had gone. Her mother explained that Ruby had gone to meet an occultist late at night, but never returned home. The police then went to the occultist. When they questioned him, he initially denied seeing Ruby that day. However, under pressure, she admitted that Ruby used to visit him often, but she did not come on Karva Chauth. The police began to suspect that he was telling the truth. The police then started investigating Ruby's mobile phone. They found many numbers on her phone, but she rarely spoke to most of them. However, there were two numbers she frequently contacted. One belonged to the occultist and the other to another person. On the day of Karva Chauth, Ruby had only spoken to these two people. The police suspected that one of them might know where Ruby was. The police picked up the occultist and brought him to the police station. Meanwhile, another team of police officers brought in the other person Ruby had been frequently in contact with. The investigation began, and they started questioning both of them. When the police asked them, both denied knowing where Ruby was. Then the police began questioning them thoroughly, but they were not telling the truth. However, the police were certain that one of these two people knew the truth, because Ruby used to talk to them the most and didn't talk to anyone else. The police then used third-degree methods on them and tortured them a lot, but they still didn't open their mouths. The occultist claimed to be innocent, and the other person also claimed innocence. The police wondered how they could endure so much torture without confessing, and the only evidence they had against them was the call records. Without any other evidence, the police kept them in jail for a few days, but later released them. However, the police instructed some of their men to keep an eye on them. As time passed, the police began paying less attention to the case because they had no more leads, and those two individuals hadn't confessed. Eventually, the investigation slowed down, and the police lost interest in the case. 6 months passed this way. The case had come to the police in 2020, and now it was 2021. The police had lost focus on the case, but the Ruby mother would go to the police station and ask if they had found her daughter, and the police would say that the investigation was ongoing and that they would find out something gradually. And now Ruby's mother was very worried. She became even more anxious when she saw Ruby's two children. The children were also distressed because their mother wasn't with them. Ruby's mother was wondering what would happen in their lives. First, their father had left, and now there was no trace of their mother. The condition of Ruby's mother's house was not good at all. One day, a man walked into the police station in Lucknow. He was the same person with whom Ruby used to talk, and his name was Pawan, around 30 years old. When he arrived at the station, the police were surprised to see him there voluntarily, as they usually had to drag him in whenever they wanted to bring him in for questioning. But today, he walked into the police station on his own, which puzzled the officers. When the police saw him, he seemed a bit nervous. He wanted to say something, but his lips weren't cooperating. Finally, he said, "Arrest me. I killed Ruby." The police were shocked by his confession. They had beaten him so many times and used third-degree methods, but he never confessed before. And now, suddenly, he was admitting that he was Ruby's killer. The police noticed he was trembling and scared, so they went outside the station to check if someone had beaten him and brought him there. But there was no one outside. Then the police asked him, "Did you come here of your own will?" Pawan replied, "Yes, I came here of my own will, to confess my crime. I killed Ruby." The police began to suspect that perhaps his mental balance had deteriorated, that he was not in his right mind, and that he was just saying whatever came to his mind. So the police sat him down gently and asked him to explain what he wanted to say, assuring him not to be afraid. Pawan replied that he wasn't afraid, but if they didn't listen to him, he might die. When the police asked what had happened, he said that Ruby's spirit hadn't let him sleep for the past 6 months. She comes every day to disturb him. At first, I thought it was nothing and that the situation would gradually resolve itself, believing I was just overthinking. But now, Ruby continues to haunt me. Whoever I looks at, I sees Ruby's face. Whenever I try to sleep at night, I only saw Ruby, who appears to threaten and scare me. The police then asked him, "What are you talking about?" The police said that he was scared, which is why he was talking like that. He insisted that he was not scared and was not joking about it. He said he was telling the truth and that he hadn't killed Ruby. The police then asked, All right, then tell us why you killed Ruby." He then began his story, saying that on the day of Karva Chauth, Ruby had come to meet him. He narrated to the police how they both loved each other, and after her divorce, she came to live with her mother. They started seeing each other in the neighborhood, which led to conversations and eventually exchanging phone numbers. Gradually, they fell in love. They used to meet often, and he had even called her to meet on the day of Karva Chauth. So then, he went on to explain that I had told Ruby to observe the Karva Chauth fast for me, thinking that maybe we were married or not. But I considered her my wife. However, she didn't observe the fast, so I said, "All right, if you didn't observe it, then just come and meet me as..." She came to meet me, and then I told her, "Tonight, you'll stay here." I told her that we would behave as a couple would, like husband and wife living together. But Ruby wasn't ready for this. She was saying that we would do all this after marriage. I have 2 children at home and my mother is there. I can't do all this right now. I'll do all this after marriage. I tried very hard to convince her, but she kept saying no to me every time, which made me angry because that day I had to take little alcohol. I was intoxicated and got angry. Whatever was in my hand, I hit her on the head with it, and it turned out to be a very heavy object. When I looked at her a little later, Ruby was lying on the bed, not breathing, and a lot of blood was coming out of her head. When I saw this in front of me, my intoxication vanished completely. Then I thought, what have I done? I didn't want to do this. I wanted to marry Ruby, but in my anger, I killed her. Then I got scared that the police might catch me. So, what I did was, I dug a hole in my room and buried Ruby there. Then I started living there comfortably because I knew that no one knew about me meeting Ruby or Ruby talking to me. Everyone's focus was on the occultist because she used to go to him often. But when the police got my number, I didn't tell them the truth because I knew that as long as Ruby's corpse was in my room, I didn't have to fear anyone. Before everything was fine, but a few days ago, I started feeling scared that Ruby was frightening me and threatening to kill me. Earlier, I used to drink alcohol and forget everything in the drunken state, but now, since I no longer get drunk, I feel like Ruby will come out of the hole and kill me. I haven't slept for several days, and everywhere I look, I only see Ruby, who seems like she will kill me. Now I feel like I'm going to go crazy, or Ruby herself will kill me. I had only one thought, to come to you and confess my crime so that Ruby wouldn't accuse me, but the police still thought that I was talking this way because of my unstable mental state. However, the police now had evidence that I had buried Ruby's corpse in my room, and they said that if her body was found in my room, then the story I told them would definitely be true. Then a police team went to Pawan's house and started searching for the pit in the room. After digging, it was revealed that Pawan had indeed killed Ruby and buried her body in his room. By then, Ruby's body had turned into a complete skeleton, making it difficult to recognize. However, the police called Ruby's mother, who identified her daughter by 2 things: the bangles on Ruby's wrist and a metal rod that had been inserted into Ruby's left side feet after an operation. This rod was found among the bones, which helped confirm Ruby's identity. Ruby's mother confirmed that the skeleton was indeed her daughter, and the police accepted it. However, in court, without concrete evidence, no one could be held guilty. Therefore, further investigations were conducted and DNA samples were taken. The DNA results confirmed Ruby's identity, and a charge sheet was filed against Pawan, who was subsequently sent to jail. The case highlighted how a person, in a fit of anger, could take another person's life without considering the consequences. Pawan failed to see how his actions would affect others, including Ruby's children and her mother. The children had already lost their father, and now, because of Pawan, they had also lost their mother. So, this was today's story. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We hope you enjoyed the content and found it valuable.